Hill is also here.
Yeah, yeah, to go, yeah.
Okay.
So it's the most committed students left now.
Oh, it doesn't know that.
Oh.
So, this is just where we left it. So, which is the Digha Nikaya, the long story. So, just to show you what they look like when they're, and that's the first book, the 13 of them. So, I think we covered that quite. And we looked through the synopses that are in the Access to Insight. So, that's where we are. Majjhima Nikayas are very stock standard. It's a little bit dry and monastic. They're a bit weighty the way that they go through. They're quite long and not too long. So there's a Majjhima Nikaya, here, that orange one. And here's synopsis. So you'll see. I won't go too much of them, but they're like in this difficult but important sutta. The Buddha reviews in depth.
Okay, have a safe trip.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
See you next week.
Yeah, next week.
Next week, okay.
One of the most fundamental principles. So you can hear what it's like. You know, it's the root sequence. It's difficult but important. It's fundamental principle. You know, it's going to be heavy. It's not going to be like those stories. Just to give, I'm not going to go into it what these are. But this is about the asavas, you know, like about sensuality, above all about becoming views and ignorance. So it's going a bit deeper in. It's more monkish in its temperament, rather than being stories or having entertainment factor. Or something. It's more information. It's drier, and they're medium length. They're still pretty long. Fear and terror. Thanissaro does a nice good job of these little synopses. What would it take to live in solitude in the wilderness, completely free of fear? The Buddha explains. He's got this nice way of putting it sort of, ooh, let's have a look. You know, let's go and take a trip. You know, it's like advertising almost.
Yeah.
You know, how he manages to get you intrigued. You know, and then with a simile of the cloth, and the difference in a defiled mind and a pure mind, and so on. So, just give you an idea. The Satipatthana Sutta, the big one on 4 foundations of mindfulness, one of the other places it shows up. It's not the only place. There's a long and medium and short version of that. Mulla Pariyarya Sabasava Bhayavara Vatupama, and then the Sallekha Sutta. This is brilliant. It's not that brilliant in that version, but there's a brilliant series of talks. I think it was during one whole range retreat, like a 3-month course. Mahasi Sayadaw took this one sutta, Sallekha Sutta, the 8th one in the Majjhima Nikaya, the discourse on effacement. It means shyness, you know, of the opposite of bragging and boasting and making a big deal about yourself and being conceited and showy. It's like this, to cool yourself down. It's 44 defilements, like cruelty, and it's making this notion that other people may do that, I won't. It's this inner resolve to be called. Other people may be boastful, I will not. I refuse, I will give up that quality. Other people may harbour grudges, I will give it up. So, have a quick look at that sutta, as it appears here, the Sallekha Sutta, the discourse. Basically it goes like this. And you can see it's a list. And Chunda comes up to him, and Chunda's just come out of jhanic absorption. He's been on a jhana course, and he's come out of bliss, like, you know, like you're talking about, having out rapture, and it's so easy, it's so nice, and he's kind of floating on air. But the Buddha says to him, he says, you've just had a blissful experience, but you have not yet removed these things. So here it says, Chunda, effacement should be practiced by you, like this. Others will be harmful, we shall not be harmful here. Thus effacement can be done. And then it goes through all the precepts, and then it goes through thoughts of ill will and wrong views, and then it goes through the eightfold path backwards. Wrong view, wrong intention, wrong speech, wrong actions, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration. So we shall have right concentration here, thus self-effacement will be done. And then wrong knowledge, wrong deliverance. That's like wrong liberation. People think they've got a liberation because they got powerful muscles now or something. Wrong view, wrong deliverance. Others will be overcome by sloth and torpor. Others will be agitated, others will be doubting, others will be angry. So it goes on with 44 of these. And that's in the Mahasi Sayadaw's book, which I want to introduce you to, he takes each one of those and gives a discourse on each one of them. So there's 44 discourses on each different one, and it gives a Jataka story, a definition of what it means, an example of it in person, and everything. So it's a very, very good series. I was delighted when I found it, and I did a reading of that book and uploaded it. So there's 150 MP3s that read through those stories. Really good. Chunda, is it impossible that one who is himself sunk in the mire, in the mud, in the sinking mud, should pull out another who is sunk in the sinking mud? But it is possible, Chunda, that the one not sunk in the mire himself should pull out another one who is sunk in the mire. It is not possible, Kunda, that one who is himself not restrained, not disciplined, not quenched as to his passions should make others restrained if possible. So it's possible to have jhanic absorption, but still to actually have quite a lot of defilement still there. So it's through magga, through nibbana realization, that those get pulled out permanently. So he's making this point repeatedly that jhana only gives you temporary relief and bliss for a while, but they're all still sleeping. You could do the blissful jhanic concentration we did on the kasina that we did just then, all of those practices, and then you get a text that someone's sleeping with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you go, what? And it will all go out the window, you won't be able to concentrate at all. But if you practice those ways and got nibbana 4 times, you get the text and you go, you haven't, no problem, I'm not bothered. You wouldn't get the rage, which is dormantly sleeping but just hasn't got the object yet, which is called anusaya kalesa, sleeping defilements. Deep, like the ocean, is this suttanta on effacement, dealing with 44 items, showing them fine sections. So there it goes in list, but Mahasi goes through it in, and I'll show you that before we carry on. So let's just move on now to, this is how you see it in Digital Pali Reader. Majjhima, first book, which is the Mula Pariyaya, and the first book is divided into 5. Mula Pariyaya Vago. Sihanada Vago. The Mula is a root, so this is the root 50. That's what it means. Sihanada is a lion, so this is the lion group. Opama, I'm not sure what Opama is. Maha Yamaka, the big couples, the small couples group. Okay, and then so you'd click on that arrow here, if this thing would stop jumping around. Click on that, and you would come up with the number 1, Majjhima Nikaya 1. E wang me sutang e kantame bhagavad. So then you get your sutta. So there they are. And then if you click on the first one, you get the first one. So there are the first 7 of the Mahabharata. Oh, sorry, no. So next, here we go, Kudika. We've skipped over a couple here. Kudika is this basket of nice, interesting stories. The Jatakas are in there, the Dhammapada's in there, the Hungry Ghost stories, and so on. Mil means Melinda, so Melinda Panha is the questions of King Melinda. So this is just the Pali version, starting from the beginning, and won't dwell too much on the Pali version because we're going to go and show this. I'm not sure what the order these, and I think these are just clips to give you ideas of the kind of things that are in there. Here's a couple that are started about mindfulness. What Nagasena is the characteristic mark of mindfulness? Noting and keeping in mind. Actually, I'll just get the first bit where he meets Nagasena because it's quite amusing and it's a better introduction. Yeah. So he says, how many rain seasons do you have Nagasena? Each monk has like 5 or 4 or 3 or 12 or something. How many rain seasons do you have Nagasena? 7, Your Majesty. How can you say it is your 7? Is it you who are 7, or the number that is 7? This is the king got him on the spot, and then Nagasena said, your shadow is now on the ground. Are you the king, or is the shadow the king? I'm the king, Nagasena. but the shadow comes into being just because of me. Well, just so, O king, the number of the years is 7. I am not 7, but it is because of me that the number 7 comes into being, and it is mine in the same sense as the shadow is yours. Most wonderful Nagasena, extraordinary. Well has this puzzle been solved by you, difficult as it was. And then the king said, Venerable sir, will you discuss with me again? This is when they just met, and the king is out on the hunt looking for a real arahant. So he's been told this is a real one. If your majesty will discuss as a scholar, yes, but if you will discuss as a king, no. Well, how is it then that scholars discuss? When scholars discuss, there is a summing up and an unravelling. One or other is shown to be in error. He admits his mistake, yet he does not become angry. Well, then how is it that kings discuss? When a king discusses a matter and advances a point of view, if anyone differs from him on that point, he is apt to punish him. When a king discusses a matter and advances a point of view, very well then, it is as a scholar I will discuss. Let your reverence talk without fear. It is well, your majesty. Nagasena, I will ask a question, said the king. Ask it, sir. I have asked it, your reverence. Then I have answered. What have you answered? What have you asked? Thinking, this monk is a great scholar, he's quite able to discuss things with me. The king instructed his minister, Devamantia, to invite him to the palace with a large company of monks, and went away muttering, Nagasena. This is the intro. And then I'll show you the book. One version of it looks like this. And the reason it's nice, so that intro is just this prologue, the debate of king, this bit here. But each of these chapters deals with a really key part of the teachings. The soul, the rebirth, the beginning of time, sense basis, the Buddha, attachment, and then all these memory, the solving of dilemmas, those are really critical ones. So there really is an animated way of bringing it to life. Some of the king's questions on rebirth. He was reborn, Nagasena. Is he the same person or another? Neither the same nor another. Give me an illustration. In the case of a pot of milk that turns first to curds, then to butter, then to ghee, it would not be right to say that the ghee, butter and curds were the same as the milk, but they have come from that, so neither would it be right to say that they are something else. It explains very, very step by step, and the king's questions always usually relate step by step one to another. And it's actually difficult to pick out just one or another question to show you like a good one, because they're all kind of like a chain of questions as well. What is Nagasena that is reborn? Mind and matter. Well, is it this very mind and matter that is reborn? No, it is not. But by this mind and matter, deeds are done, and because of those deeds another mind and matter is reborn. But that mind, But that mind and matter is not thereby released from the results of its previous deeds. Give me an illustration. It is like a fire that a man might kindle, and having warmed himself, he might leave it burning and go away. Then if that fire were to set light to another man's field, and the owner were to seize him and accuse him before the king, and he were to say, Your Majesty, I did not set fire to this man's field. The fire that I left burning was different to that which burned his field. I am not guilty. Would he deserve punishment? Indeed, yes, because whatever he might say, the latter fire resulted from the former one. Just so, O king, by this mind and matter, by this mind and matter, deeds are done, and because of those deeds, another mind and matter is reborn. But that mind and matter is not released from the results of its previous deeds. Will you, Nagasena, be reborn? What is the use of asking that question again? Have I not already told you that if I die with attachment in my mind, I shall be reborn, if I shall not? So he goes on, he opens up these questions that often come to people or after thinking about it, or they hear questions that come about karma and rebirth, and karma and rebirth. And very, very thoroughly, actually, the whole teaching is unravelled, and not by the... no, what we should stop doing? I don't know, this is something to... Is there, Nagasena, such a thing as the one who knows? Vedagu. Because what? And Nagasena said, what is this thing, Vedagu? The living principle within that sees. The living principle that hears and tastes and smells and feels and discerns things. Just as we, sitting here, can look out of any window we wish to. He says like this. If, O king, the living principle within can see, hear, taste, smell and feel things like you say, can it not also see forms through the ear? It's quite good. It's like you've got this little homunculus, this little creature inside that can see things out the eye. He says, well, if there was such a thing, you could look through the ear as well. So there isn't such a thing as like that. So he, step by step, he gets in to see the way that the Buddha does see things like that. Not enough time to go through them all one by one. Probably able to pick out one or two. I did do a couple of those ones that I just read you.
Is Nagasena the Buddha, or is he
No, he's
a
not.
disciple?
Yeah, he's something like 400 years after the Buddha. And lots of the questions like this, like the king asks him about the Buddha. He says, "Have you or your teachers seen the Buddha?" He says, "No, great king." He says, "Well then, Nagasena, there is no Buddha." And he says, "Well, have you or your father seen the river Uha in the Himalayas?" He says, "No, venerable sir," because then would it be right to say there is no river Uha? He said, "Yeah, you're dexterous, Nagasena." So he asked him lots of questions about the Buddha. He says, "How can others know that the Buddha is incomparable?" Oh no, there's another one. There's another one about the ocean.
So this is not part of the Tipitika?
It is in part of the Tipitika, considered as such by the Burmese school. They just included it as part of it. But it came a little bit later on. This is actually King Melinda, this on this coin, who was a real person. And Nagasena was presumably a real arahant. And so this is recorded by the scribes of King Melinda, this Bactrian king. I mean, you get a lot about the background of this up here. Really worth reading. It's very, very the rise of the Bactrian kingdom. So it sort of talks all about it. They can tell a lot of things. They can tell a lot of things by the way that Pali is written and the style of it and so on. Really good. I mean, this is a really good way to actually learn what's in the teachings. Have you seen like the Majjhima Nikaya? Heavy duty, slow, will drag out a single point, very, very pedantically, point by point, repeated 3 times. Whereas this goes colourfully, with wit and humour. Where does wisdom dwell? Nowhere, O king. Well, then there's no wisdom. Where does the wind dwell? Nowhere. Then there's no wind. Your texture is not saying not bad. He's very. This is what happens. He keeps doing this to him, and then he said. I was trying to find this one about the Buddha where he says, well, he just says, well, how do you know the Buddha was great? He says, only by the teachings, like a great river. He says, how do you know that the river is the ocean is deep? Because of these great rivers that I've seen all keep flowing into it without changing it, so it must be deep. And he said it's the same as that all the teachers that I've had were amazing and they had all this deep knowledge, so it must be because it's in the same way, like that sort of comparison. Excellent, I really recommend that as well. I think the Dhammapada and this, if you only read those 2 things, you wouldn't need to read. That's what you're asking chronologically about the time of the Buddha. So you don't necessarily, like little things which are key points about this, about the actual teachings. Same with documentaries. People keep making these documentaries about the birth and the prince and the riding out and seeing the foresights of the old people, and then he gets enlightened under a tree, and then the credits come up, and you don't actually hear what he taught. Just that they only get that much because they take that approach, chronology approach or historical approach. So if you just only read this, you get the teachings, you get very many things about it. The important things, really. Yeah. It's not actually that important. That's why the Buddha said, "I'm done. I can pass the teaching on now. You don't need me anymore." Because the Buddha was only passing on the teaching, and once he'd got that done, he was okay. He was like, "I'm finished." Yes, brings a great deal of clarity to the teaching. So I really recommend it. As I said, I'm recording these. So if you also want these as MP3s, I'm going to put them up pretty soon. Up onto one of those sites, probably that one we just made yesterday about that's got the videos up on access to them, and you can just then listen to them as MP3s. One question, one MP3. Yeah, this is a very nice one where it says, these 3 Nagasena, consciousness, vijnana, wisdom, panha, and the soul, Bhutasming jivo, are they different in essence or only in name? He said, knowing, O king, is the mark of consciousness, and discrimination is the mark of wisdom. A soul cannot be found. Well, the elder said, a hard thing has been done by the Blessed One, the distinguishing of all those mental conditions that depend on an organ of sense. showing such is contact, such is feeling, such is perception, such is intention, such is the mind. He says, give me an illustration. If a man were to take a handful of water from the ocean and tasting it, could say, this water is from the Ganges, this from the Jumna, this from the Gandak, this from the Saravan, this from the Mahi. More difficult than this is the distinguishing of those mental states that accompany any one of the senses. Since it was midnight, the king made offerings to Nagasena, and the king said, like a lion in a golden cage longs only for freedom, so do I long for the monk's life. Really recommended reading. Easy reading, good fun reading, and answers a lot of questions that can come up against. So that's an introduction about that, which I did as sort of some snapshots. And another one is this, which is from the Samyutta Nikaya, which is the third of those groups. You've got Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, the grouped discourses. And that book is divided into 5 sections, but the first one I really recommend because it's also colourful. The other ones are mainly dry analytical, but that's a bit of a generalisation. But the first one, Gata, is a poem. Sagata is versed sections. So it's in 11 books of these sections of verses. I'll give you an example of it. That first one. Here. One, the book of the sayings with stanzas. Chapter 1, the Devas. 1, the enriched Suttas. 1, crossing the flood. Thus have I heard. The exalted one was once staying near Savatthi at Jetava Grove in Anathapindika's park. English Pali. Now a certain Deva, when the night was fast spent, shedding radiance, with his effulgent beauty over the whole Jeta Grove, Atako Anyatara Devata, Abhikantaya Ratya, Abhikantawana, Kevalakapa, Jetawana Mbova says the Pali. Came into the presence of the exalted one. Yena Bhagava Tena Vasankamitva Bhagavanta Abhivadeva. Saluted him and stood to one side. So standing, he spake thus to the exalted one. Ekamantam atasi, Ekamantam titako sa devata, Bhagavantam etadavo cha. Tell me, dear sir, how didst thou cross the flood? Katam no tvam marisa, ogamatari ti. Unstayed, friend, and unstriving did I cross the flood. Apatitam kvaham aus, anayuham, ogamatari ti. But how didst thou do so without stay, without striving cross the flood? Yata kata panatvam marisa apatitam anayuham ogamatari ti. When I, friend, kept myself stayed, then verily I sank. Yada kvaham auso santitami tadasu sansina. When I, friend, strove hard, then verily was I whirled about. Yada kvaham auso ayuham tadasu nivuviham. And so, friend, unstayed, unstriving, did I cross the flood. Evam kvaham auso apatitam anayuham ogamatari ti. Deva, lo, now what length of time since I beheld a perfect saint from evil wholly free. Chirasan vata asami rahmanam hariniptam one who, nor stayed, nor striving in the flood, hath safely crossed where all the world sticks fast.
Apatitam anagipam tinam loke visatika ti.
Thus spake that Deva, and the Master approved.
Idama vocha sa devata samanunyo sata ahosi.
And the Deva, noting that approval, made salutation by the right.
Atako sa devata samanunyo me sata ti bhagavanta abhivadeva.
And vanished there and then.
Padakinam katva tatevan taradayiti.
So I've done the whole of that book like that in the English and the Pali, and also the Pali, but just the English is alright, or just the English and Pali if you'd like to hear how it sounds in the original as well. Good stuff. There's a lot of humour, there's a lot of human interest, and a lot of insight into the way that they were taught. They weren't always taught in this sort of dry analytical formulae, and you can get that from this. So it's a really good way to see how the early teachings were taught. And they weren't always taught only as like meditation and vipassana and all this sort of thing. You get a lot of human interest, a lot of bhikkhus and bhikkhunis going off to the forest and having to deal with their doubts, or days of farmers coming up and squabbling, or lots and lots of different things, lots of little mini dramas, and a lot of sort of dry humour. Even some of the way that the devas are pictured as uppity. Some of the times there's 3 devas that come down and try to test the Buddha and say that you just say all those things, but we know on the quiet you're really naughty on the side, something like this. And he says, no, it's not true. There is a perfected one, and I'm perfected. And they went, oh, sorry, we shouldn't have done it. It was only, that's other one, what do you call, dared me to come down and do it. So that was very sorry. And then he says there are perfected ones, and perfected ones never lie. And one of them jumps up in the air and goes, who are you to say those sort of things? There's no one who's perfected. Everyone makes a little slip in that area or something. So it gets all uppity like this. So there's lots of different sort of colourful scenarios that happen in that. That's the Sagata Vago. Very, very good. And it's all little poems. So it's got also softer on the ear to follow.
Is it a Theravada thing to constantly reference the Pali? Because I've noticed a lot of people in Theravada, like Burmese tradition, when even contemporary teachers.
I've had teachers tell me that if you change anything, you're creating bad karma.
Oh, so that's why a lot of teachers really are grounded in Pali, and they recite the Pali.
Because it's a lot with the whole, like in meditation, the more you get out of the way and let it all come through, it works. Well, the same thing in the, if you've memorized and you've done your study, when people ask you about the Buddha's teachings, what you should be able to do is just relay on. Not start talking about yourself and going on about your own dramas and your own history and your personal opinions or whatever. What the hell use are they? Really, in the long run, we're trying to relay on what the Buddha and these sort of great masters realised. So the way to do that is to have read it and know it.
From the Pali.
Yeah, and from the Pali is the authentic original source.
So it's like getting yourself out of the way so that the Buddha's voice can be heard, and you're just transmitting with it. Okay.
That's
so I have to learn Pali?
No, because there are so many reliable, pretty reliable sources. I mean, often, like with that last exercise, I had 2 versions, because the Old English, Pali Text Society, is oldie English, is like Shakespeare, and it can be, you can even like, what, sometimes I can't understand, because they're such oldie, unused words, I can't understand it. So I'll keep like one of the modern American ones, either Bhikkhu Bodhi or Access to Insight, because they use bland, flat, it's almost too bland and too flat sometimes, it was quite eloquent, the original, quite interesting and quite, carefully crafted, and you just sort of squashed it down into sort of taxi driver, sort of English, and it's a little bit too flat sometimes. And so you have to get something more or less in the middle to get the meaning. But I would just check the meaning like that, and the more and more as I get on in years and seasoned as a monk, I'll check back to the original to look sort of what Pali word were they using for that? Oh dear. And then you start to build up more familiarity and tackle this problem of the Pali itself and get more comfortable with it. But necessarily have to go on a course and learn Pali first, can just be a little help. So a couple of things more to introduce to. One is what the Mahasi's Sallekha book looks like. This is a brilliant book. I've had so many people say the same thing. I also did this as an audio, and so it's got 44 of these things, right? The 44, here they are. So where's that one? Just sort of arrogance. Arrogance, ingratitude and arrogance. I don't know what it's going to say, but arrogance is to regard oneself on an equal footing with noble persons and to speak disrespectfully of them. It is the tendency to rival great men who are unique and peerless in intellectual and spiritual spheres. So he'll talk about the definition of what it is. Actually quite a brief one. But usually, and let's see if this one has a story. Usually they were like envy. They'll introduce the subject, and then he'll talk about it in daily life, and then he'll talk a little about it, in the theory. And then, according to the Chula Karma Vivanga Sutta, he's talking into the suttas, also not that much of a story. Usually what I've seen him doing is that he'll find characterizations from the suttas. There you go, so this one's about meanness. 29th one, Macharya, called wealth. However, on his deathbed, the young man saw the Buddha as the latter passed the house, paid his respects. I think we just talked about this one.
Yeah, we did.
Right? Oh, okay, right. So then, the story of Macharya Kosya, multi-millionaire, so stingy he did not offer even a drop of cooking oil to alms mendicants. That's right, I remember this one. One day on his return from the royal palace, he saw a man eating fried food heartily and rose in him his desire to eat such food. However, he did not wish any food to be prepared for his wife, let alone for the other members of his household, since that would mean using a lot of rice butter. Because of his stinginess, he did not want to tell anyone about his desire. However, the desire became oppressive, and at last he lay miserably in his bed. When pressed by his wife, he expressed his desire, and in compliance she went to prepare the food, just enough for her husband, only for him, lest he should have to give anyway who saw him eating. The couple went up to the top story of the 7-story building so no one could see them. There, with all the doors bolted, set about to prepare the food. And then the Buddha, seeing their potential for the attainment of streaming, sent the elder Moggallana, the one with all the magic powers. The elder went there and stood in the air near the window of the chamber, outside the window, where they were preparing the food. He's sitting there hovering in the air. The millionaire was shocked at the sight of the elder. He wondered how the elder had come to his hideaway, and told him that he would not get any food, whatever he might do, even floating in the air. Moggallana performed miracles such as walking, sitting in the air, emitting smoke. Kosya dared not challenge the elder to emit flames, lest his house be burned down. This is stingy, put that out. Knowing that the bhikkhu would not go away unless he got some food, the miser told his wife to prepare a small one. However, the cake became so big, when he started making it, just started swelling up. He was using his magic powers again. It filled the frying pan. The miser tried to make it small, to break it up, but every time he tampered with it, it became bigger and bigger. The frustrated miser told his wife to offer a cake to the elder. However, when the woman took a cake, all the cakes stuck together, and it was impossible to separate them. First the miser tried, and then he and his wife tried together to separate the cakes, but it was in vain. At last, tired and frustrated, the miser no longer had any desire to eat, and so he told his wife to offer all the cakes to the bhikkhu. Then Moggallana gave a talk on the benefits of almsgiving. The talk inspired Kosya with so much faith that he asked the elder to eat the cakes in his house. However, the elder said that the Buddha was waiting for food, together with 500 bhikkhus, and with their consent, he took them to the Jetavana monastery in Savatthi, which was 45 leagues away. I think he flew them there. It said that Moggallana took them there by means of his supernormal power, so they reached the gate of the Jetavana monastery just as they passed the foot of the staircase of their house, and they offered all this stuff. So like you see what that comes from is just like this 1-2 liner, you know, meanness, imageria, you know, I shall not do it, but he expands it out, including stories. It brings it all to life, not at all karmic effects of meanness. Another story, the Brahmin Todya, and another one. So he really elaborates. And so these talks here, that violence, you know, the one about violence, one about killing, these would have been given as a daily talk. So that talk about killing, the act of killing, the causes of other killing, the karmic effects of killing, all these different things that he talks about, these would have been given to a temple full of people for the night. You know, they've all been meditating, doing their vipassana, and then he'll give a 1-hour talk. So each one of these is like a 1-hour talk, full of colour, full of richness, that makes them like go to bed, like, you know, meditate away and sleeping when they've heard a good talk. And there's 44 of them. So really, really good stuff. And really rich in both authority and humour and entertainment and colour, just like the Buddha. You always see that with the Buddha. The Buddha suddenly gave a talk all about the ancient past. You know, he's very, very animated. The way he talks, very colourful. So I think it's just a bit of a crime when you see some people talk in a very bland way, or totally off of this. They never even heard of this. They never even explored it, and so they start talking off in, you know, talking about physics or psychotherapy or something like this. When they, you know, this is very, very rich stuff. So that's mine. But I really recommend the Mahasi Sallekha Sutta. As I say, I've done it as audios, and I think I've already uploaded them onto the net already.
I'm surprised to know that 2,000 years ago they already had fried foods and cake and all that.
Oh yeah.
I thought that's a recent thing to fry foods and have cakes.
No.
And sugar too, it's there.
No. I mean, like, there's a lot of stories where a lot of them, the royals and that, they would make a really elaborate, rich food. Like, what's the beautiful one? The courtesan, Sirima. She used to invite like 25 monks per day to her house. And the banquet they would have would be really ornamented food, really refined.
Gourmet.
Yeah, really gourmet stuff. It was the end of her life, and she had been paid like 1,000 per night all of her life as a courtesan, high class prostitute. So she was really, really wealthy, and she had like huge mansion. So she had a whole kitchen staff and a sort of proper marble kitchen with all the cooking going on. No. In those times they knew how to live. They had a good life. Yeah, a lot of these details get filled in and start to be able to picture the times of the life. That's really important. That's another good reason for sort of reading through this stuff. You can get your own references to sort of, you know, visualise it. Even heard some scholars, and they sort of think themselves out of existence. They say, oh, the Buddha probably didn't exist, and they sort of like twiggle themselves out and tie themselves in knots with too many riddling questions. Another good reason for reading like Mahasi Sayadaw, he's really firm, he's really established, probably an Arahant, you know, really established in the faith, and so then he sort of like describes about it. So people are a bit too scholarly, they only sort of like, they're not really established in it, and they stay on the outside, they never really meditate enough, they overstudy without having sort of fully realised or having been fully appreciative of it. Including this one, which is the Great Chronicles of the Buddhas. Also, like this is a free edition. I found Singapore edition really good. I'll show you. No, I'll just show you this. But there is another edition by not Sitaku Sayadaw. His name escapes me a moment. He's the one with the. Oh, here we go. Mingun Sayadaw. There it is. Mingun Sayadaw is the one in the Guinness Book of Records who remembered the entire Tipitika. This title he's got, Tipitika Dara Dhammapada Garika, Banda Garika, means he's a Agama Bandita. These titles, he's the top. You know, this is the most authoritative one. And so he wrote this book at the request of the Prime Minister, the Great Chronicles of the Buddha. Wrong font. That's like ice cream salesman, isn't it? So the kind of things that get covered in this. wait a minute. I did. This is what I tried to do as a, because even the content is about 18 pages long. Talking about the previous Buddhas, like this Sumedha the Brahmin is the first one in our era. Sorry, Sumedha the Brahmin is a layperson who meets the Buddha of his time and starts to become the Buddha that we've got in our time. That he meets Dipankara Buddha. So that's way back. I think he's the 24th or the 28th previous Buddha. And he meets Sumedha, who at that time is a Brahmin, is just a layperson. Brahmin is just sort of like a respected layperson. And the Dipankara says to him, you will become a Buddha. Keep striving to perfect yourself. So he does, and he then goes off and he perfects almsgiving. He perfects morality, renunciation. He perfects all these things one by one, and starts working on. It starts working towards Panha, the enlightenment wisdom. So then there's a good long, very thorough explanation of what the paramis are, and that's really good for everything nowadays to understand. So what does it mean by perfect almsgiving? What's the perfect gift? What's the perfect way to give? What's the intention matters? Does it matter if you give a little bit or a lot? Or can you give money? Shouldn't you give money? Should you give food? When? How? To who? Blah. All these different things are covered under these things. All these questions here. What are the basic conditions of the paramis? What are the factors of the Dhamma? Goes on and on in deep detail. And then these are the 24 Buddhas, starting with Dipankara. So you've got 24, interestingly here. These are the names of them all there. And then chapter 1, the jewel of the Buddha, the story of Satipatthana. It's pointless to go into all it because there's so much here. It's very, very thick and full. And the conception of the Bodhisattva. So this is our Buddha. So you got up to Kassapa Buddha, and then it becomes Gautama Buddha or Sakya Buddha, depends what they call him. Who's our Buddha? So all the previous ones had taught exactly the same way, realised exactly the same way. Teaching had fizzled out, and then he rediscovered it. But he, with his enlightenment eye, could know all about them and recall all about them. And there were many Brahmas and Devas that also, they're span-encompassed ones where they could see about them as well and pass on knowledge. For things like the creation of the monks' rules and things like that, the Buddha could consult and say, what did the previous Buddha do in this circumstance? And they'd be able to tell and use his own memory. So this is still all prior to enlightenment. And there's only up to chapter 4, and this goes up to about 48 chapters or something, so I won't go yet. But this is the chronological story of the Buddha in detail. So this is the Buddha's enlightenment, realization of the three knowledges. This is how he got past life knowledges, how the homage was paid by the Devas and the Brahmas when they realized he had got full enlightenment, attainment of all the superpowers, and so on and on and so on. The 7 purifications of the Buddha as they happened. Maganana Dasana, that's the realization of Nibbana, purification of knowledge, and many miracles and attainment of his Buddhahood. And then how he stayed at the 7 places, under the tree, standing, just staring, walking backwards and forwards, and so on, and how he went to meet the 5 ascetics, and all the details about that, which is very excellent to study, and many side details that you don't come across. Excellent reading, really rich book. I was misled that it wasn't that good, and I met someone, a student who was meditating on a course that I was giving, who told me it was really, really interesting, and I went back to it and discovered that it's full of rich stuff. Even what I've got is this is the actual Buddhavamsa. There's even an after chapter which is about that thick, which was written by the same author, just details and details, and that's brilliant. and it's even just a kind of appendix, at the end, and that's brilliant. So, like all of these now are the Buddha's life, one by one by one, spring by summer by winter by event by event by event by event. This is Chinchimana is a woman who pretends to be pregnant and says the Buddha did it, and then what happens, and so on. So Buddhavamsa, really worth working through. I think if we can do a long-term course, this would even be worth working through, class by class in some of it. You see the sort of sheer scale of it, though, that's the problem. It's very, very big. So negotiate. There's the usual problem about how to go into the teachings gradually and not overwhelmingly. So this is what I'm trying to do, is like show you first of all like a superstructured way of doing it, and then some of the more enterable parts of the Tipitika, and then just have a glimpse of the sheer scale and but make it interesting and not off-putting enough as well. So that's my task. And so these are details about arahants, 41 arahants, and things about them, how they got to be arahant, and their story, and the two chief disciples. So we'll talk richly about them, and it's got quite amusing and again sort of colourful stories, a lot of cross references, so you can see that it all holds together, which is always good. So it goes on in that, and then it carries on about the female, male and female enlightened beings, and then lay female and male people, like Sujata the wife, Visakha the key donor, all the details, more and more about her. So, which is also a very good, another way to approach the teaching, is just to read about the people. So there it goes. That's the introduction to the Buddhavamsa. 1,744 pages. We skimmed through 49 there. So that's what you're up against. So that kind of thing is asked, but excellent nonetheless. Something else is this, which is, so we're just talking there about people. I've got an old version of the Digital Pali Reader, which I can recommend you copy, because the new ones, they tend to use a lot of animation and flash, and they put a lot of gadgets built into it. This old one is much quicker, because it doesn't know it's going to go slowly. It's not, it's just not as fancy, and so it's a bit more basic, and that's how it looks. And so it's a bit more, basic. But it just does it. Usually, just does it exactly when you want to. And in the N section here, it's got a good dictionary of Pali names. So we want to find out about Visakha, who are just talking about there. You get all the people and all the places. Very, very handy. So Visakha is probably one of these two. But I don't know if it's Visakha or Visakha. No, it's the other one. That one. The chief among the lay disciples of the Buddha, declared by him to be foremost among those administered to the order. She's considered as the ideal lay woman. I told a story about her at the talk the other night, how a load of women came along to see the Buddha, and they all hid away lots of little bottles of gin, bottles of vodka or something, or breezers or whatever it is they had in those days, and they all got drunk, and they started dancing on the tables, and Buddha emitted this like powerful blue light across the whole place, and they went and then started like radiating white light up into the sky, and they went, oh no, we've done it now, and they sobered right up, and he taught them in such a way that they snapped out of it and attained good. So this is a good way to find out about people and places, and there's also another way to cross-refer the reality of them. Right. So when you read how intricately woven up they are, and where the places were, and what happened at them, you see it's like too good to be quite made up. They're too complex and too interwoven to have been an invention. So it makes it all that more interesting. That was a project I did at one point, which was just to read these one by one. Just start with A and just read, who they are and where they are. and these are names of suttas and places. There are names of anything that's a name, like monks, names of Jataka stories, names of Deva realms. That's a Deva realm, Abhasa, it's a luminous realm, and so on. It's just another way to sort of cut across. Actually, I found this very good because it cuts across everything. Like you might get one story, like this is about the Deva realms. Abhaya is a hell realm. Abhaya Sutta is about what fearlessness means. We were just looking at it. Abhaya Giri is a place where the Buddha stayed. It's a balm, staying place. And so on. It sort of cuts through them all. You get a bit of the monk's rules making, a bit of the Buddha's life, a bit of a person, a bit of a king, a bit of a city, a bit of a woods, a bit of a summer. And you get all these different things because it cuts across everything.
It's like a sampler dish.
Yeah, exactly. And nothing is too overwhelmingly long. They're all sort of because all they're doing is going, oh yeah, well that sutta is just about this. They don't feel too obliged to have to repeat it all. All they're going to do is just wrap it up and tell you sort of what more or less happened in that sutta. Abhaya Sutta, a woman possessed of the 5 powers, beauty, wealth, kings and son, continues to get the better husband. Finished. See? All just a little wrap up. And that's the difficult thing, is to get those kind of things. Go, yeah, good. I'll look at that. And then you can know where to find it. Samplers. Exactly. So that's also another really good tool. And I did that for a while. It was just, and I've got the recordings of that. I'd often do that, just like using MP3 and just read them one by one, like that one I just read, and the next one and just read that, and the next one and just read that. Because we get put enough in these temples for 3 months at a time, So sometimes you got a lot of time on your hands, and you can meditate for sort of 2 weeks non-stop. But what about the next week and the next week and the next week? So some of those projects are really good to sort of like go through. This was an interesting project, probably a 556, but just really to the end, just to introduce what I did here, which was to look at the Sigla Sutta, very, very important sutta, and it talks about these things. The first 4 precepts, the first 4 vices: don't kill, don't steal, don't adulterate, and don't use bad speech. So, don't kill, don't steal, don't adulterate, don't use bad speech, and then desire, anger, ignorance and fear. Wasted. Indeed. And then the 6 ways of dissolution of wealth. Channels dissipate with drink, drugs, hanging around in streets, and shows, gambling. And for each of them it gives 6. Sort of 6 things like that: shows, gambling, evil friends, and idleness. Drink. What is it about drink? Loss of wealth, quarrels, disease, bad reputation, public exposure, weak intellect. Hanging around on streets, and leaves everything unguarded. You'd be suspected of things. False rumors, meets troubles. Gambling. Shows. So you're ever thinking, where's the drumming, where's the singing, where's the dancing, which is never ending. You're always chasing around. It's a never-ending circuit of those things going on. So the drumming gets more drumming, singing gets more singing. You've got to get the microphones, and where's the karaoke, and then just go on and on and on. And one thing leads to another. You probably end up gambling, and so on. So this is about the Sigla Sutta. It's just an intro to it. It's another nice way to see it visually. Adultery and drink. Evil friends, fighters. So, another bit of a launch into this huge subject. So I'd rather you did this, is to sort of get a sort of panoramic view that stays interesting, rather than start at book number 1 and just realise, this is like trying to go upstairs. It is, keep it interesting, find out where these useful, interesting bits are in a kind of cohesive whole. That's what I'm trying to do. And then little by little, we can start to fill in the gaps as well as we go through. We can go a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. Read a little bit of the Mahasi, of the Sallekha Sutta, a little bit of the synopsis to find out a little bit more, and then gradually roots deeper out like that. That's what I want to do. And then in the meantime, I've got all of these as free files. You can take them away and read them in your own time, up to your speed you want to go to as well. So there's no shortage of that. So that's your own choice about how much homework.
It's a lot of homework.
Well, that's why I take time, and then it's why to make it interesting and find which homework to do as well, which is going to be refreshing.
I like to jump around.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good way, and I think there are some things that are good to jump from. I think like Melinda Panha, jump, because you can flip it open at any page and go, ooh, nice one. Question answer. Haha, it's good, quick one. 2 or 3 of those, or 2 or 3 pages of that, fine. Read a bit of the Sallekha Sutta, read a bit of the Dhammapada and the stories, because it's, there's 500 of each of those, so a little chunk is enough, a little chunk. But if you read a chunk of those, a chunk of Melinda, a chunk of Dhammapada and stories, a chunk of Sallekha a day, you'll get very rich, authority soon, just build it up, who's who, what's what, what's the actual teaching, as well as it staying entertaining enough, interesting enough. We should do something. I always forget. I'm not the most formal of monks. We should do Namo Tassa 3 times at the beginning and at the end. Yeah, let's do that together then, as a homage to the Buddha, for a reverence for his transmission, and to honour the gift and the heritage which is passed down, and the sincere wish and intention for this teaching to become established in the Philippines successfully for the benefit of the good people. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Can you repeat that?
Can you type it out?
Yeah. Oh, I'll say it because I don't know where it is immediately. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Sadhu. Congratulate you, encourage you. I say sadhu for your efforts. Thank you to Robin for all of your intentions, your enthusiasm, hosting, facilities, encouraging others. Thank you both for all of your encouragement and also your enthusiasm. We need that. We need enthusiastic, keen people who can go the distance. And it's good that we can share it. Did you see the analytics? I was going to show you this about around the world where it's being seen. I think it's on here.